The moment I hit send, I knew I'd made a mistake. My stomach dropped as I watched the little checkmark appear next to the message, confirming that my incredibly inappropriate text had just been delivered to the wrong number. Not just any wrong number, but a number that belonged to someone whose contact name read simply, D. Russo, work emergency only. I'd been texting my best friend Jenna about a ridiculous fantasy I'd had about a mysterious stranger I'd seen at the coffee shop that morning. The text was explicit, embarrassing, and absolutely not meant for anyone but her. But in my distracted state, scrolling through contacts while walking home from work, I'd tapped the wrong name. Now those words, those mortifyingly detailed words, were sitting on some stranger's phone. My hands trembled as I stared at my screen, willing the universe to somehow unsend the message. I'd gotten this number 3 months ago when I'd witnessed a car accident downtown, and a well-dressed man in an expensive suit had asked me to contact him if the police needed a witness statement. I'd never used it, never even thought about it, until this catastrophic moment. If you're enjoying this story so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It helps more than you know, and I promise the story only gets more intense from here. 10 minutes passed. No response. Maybe he hadn't seen it. Maybe he'd deleted it without reading. Maybe I could just pretend this never happened and go on with my life. Then my phone buzzed. My heart stopped as I looked at the screen. The message was short, just 4 words that made my blood run cold. Is this a joke? I typed frantically, my fingers barely able to hit the right keys. I'm so sorry. Wrong number. Please delete that message. I'm mortified. The 3 dots appeared immediately, indicating he was typing. They disappeared, then appeared again. This went on for what felt like an eternity before his response came through. Who is this? Sarah Mitchell, I typed back. We met 3 months ago at an accident on 5th Avenue. You gave me your number in case the police needed my statement. I'm so incredibly sorry about that message. It was meant for my friend. The dots appeared again, then vanished. No response came. I spent the next hour pacing my tiny apartment, checking my phone every 30 seconds, my anxiety building with each minute of silence. Part of me hoped he'd just let it go, forget the whole thing. But something about the way he'd responded, the careful deliberation in his messages, suggested this wasn't over. That's when I heard them. Engines, multiple engines, powerful and deep, rumbling to a stop outside my building. I lived on the 2nd floor of a converted brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, where the most exciting thing that usually happened was Mrs. Chen's cat getting stuck in a tree. I moved to my window and peered down at the street below. 5 black SUVs, sleek and menacing, were parked in a perfect line along the curb. They had tinted windows so dark I couldn't see inside, and they looked like something out of a movie. The kind of movie where people didn't ask questions if they wanted to stay healthy. My hands started shaking again. This couldn't be related to my text. That would be insane. Who sends 5 SUVs to confront someone over a misdirected message? But as I watched, the driver's door of the middle SUV opened, and a man stepped out. Even from 2 floors up, I could tell he was imposing. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. He looked up at my building with an expression I couldn't quite read, then reached into his jacket. I stumbled backward from the window, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. This was really happening. Someone was here, at my home, because of that stupid text. My phone buzzed again. With trembling hands, I looked at the screen. Come downstairs, Miss Mitchell. We need to talk. I stared at the message, my mind racing through possibilities. None of them good. I could call the police. But what would I say? That I'd sent a dirty text to the wrong number, and now mysterious men in SUVs were outside my apartment? That sounded ridiculous even in my own head. But the alternative, going down there, facing whoever this D. Russo was, terrified me even more. Another buzz. I'm not a patient man, Sarah. 5 minutes. The use of my first name sent a chill down my spine. There was something about the familiarity in it, the quiet authority, that made it clear this wasn't a request. It was a command. I grabbed my jacket with shaking hands, checked my reflection in the mirror by the door. My brown hair was a mess, my green eyes wide with fear, my face pale, and decided it didn't matter what I looked like. This wasn't a social call. The walk down the stairs felt like a march to my execution. Each step echoed in the narrow stairwell, and I found myself counting them, trying to focus on anything but what waited for me outside. When I pushed open the front door, the evening air hit me like a slap. It was October, crisp and cool, and the street was bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. Under different circumstances, it might have been beautiful. The man from the middle SUV stood on the sidewalk, his hands clasped in front of him, watching me with dark eyes that seemed to take in everything about me in a single glance. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines, with a strong jaw covered in dark stubble and a nose that looked like it had been broken at least once. But it was his eyes that caught me, deep brown and intelligent, holding secrets that probably shouldn't be spoken aloud. "Miss Mitchell," he said, his voice deep and smooth, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. "I'm Dominic Russo." I swallowed hard, trying to find my voice. "Mr. Russo, I really can't apologize enough about that text. It was a complete accident and He held up a hand, silencing me. "Get in the car." "What?" "No, I'm not getting in any car. Look, I said I was sorry. Can't we just forget this happened?" Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or perhaps frustration. It was hard to tell. "This isn't about the text, Miss Mitchell." "Well, not entirely. You've created a situation that requires my attention, and I prefer to handle delicate matters privately. Now, you can get in the car voluntarily, or I can have my men assist you. Your choice." I looked around desperately. The street was empty. No witnesses, no one to help if this went sideways. But something in his tone, despite the threat, wasn't overtly hostile. It was businesslike, almost professional. "If I get in that car, where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Somewhere we can talk without your neighbors recording this conversation for social media," he replied, nodding toward a window across the street where I could see a curtain moving. Mrs. Patterson, of course. The neighborhood gossip. He had a point. This scene probably already had the whole block buzzing. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm texting my friend your license plate number and telling her if I don't check in within an hour, she calls the police." The corner of his mouth twitched. Was that almost a smile? "Smart girl. Please do that. I'd expect nothing less." One of his men, another imposing figure in a dark suit, opened the rear door of the middle SUV. The interior was immaculate, all black leather and dark wood trim, with a privacy screen between the front and back seats. I climbed in, my legs feeling like jelly, and Dominic slid in beside me. The door closed with a heavy thunk that sounded entirely too final. As the convoy pulled away from my building, I quickly typed out a message to Jenna with shaking fingers, including the license plate number I'd glimpsed, and a brief explanation of what was happening. Her response was immediate. "Sarah, what the hell? I'm tracking your phone. If you don't text me in 45 minutes, I'm calling every cop in the city." I showed Dominic the exchange. He nodded approvingly. Good friends are valuable. We rode in silence for several minutes. I snuck glances at him from the corner of my eye, trying to understand who this man was. Everything about him screamed power and danger, from the expensive watch on his wrist to the way his men moved with military precision. But there was something else too, something I couldn't quite identify. A weariness, maybe, or a carefully controlled tension. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "My restaurant," he replied. "Best Italian food in the city. Have you eaten dinner?" I blinked. "You're taking me to dinner?" "I'm taking you somewhere private where we can discuss your situation. The fact that they serve excellent food is merely a bonus." He turned to look at me fully for the first time since we'd gotten in the car. "You're not in danger, Miss Mitchell. At least not from me. But you need to understand something about the text you sent." My stomach churned. "What about it?" "That number you have. The one I gave you at the accident. It's not my personal cell. It's a business line. A line that several of my associates monitor for security purposes." "Oh, God. How many people saw that text?" "4, he said calmly. "My head of security, 2 of his team members, and myself. I wanted to sink through the leather seat and disappear into the floor of the car. I'm going to die of embarrassment." "There are worse ways to die," he said, and there was definitely amusement in his voice now. "But the issue isn't the embarrassment. The issue is that now 4 people in my organization know that a civilian has my direct emergency line, and they've seen you send something that could be interpreted as either a very bold advance or a very stupid attempt at some kind of honeypot operation. A what? I asked, genuinely confused. An attempt to compromise me, to get close to me for ulterior motives. He said it matter-of-factly, as if this was a normal concern people had. Why would anyone think that? It was clearly a mistake. He looked at me with an expression that was almost pitying. Miss Mitchell, you seem like a smart woman, so I'm going to be direct with you. Do you know who I am? What I do? I shook my head slowly. You're some kind of businessman, I assume. You gave me your card that said Russo Enterprises. And you never looked me up? Never got curious about the man whose emergency number you saved in your phone? No, I admitted. I just filed it away and forgot about it. Why? Dominic Russo studied my face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether I was telling the truth. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he leaned back against the leather seat and let out a long breath. I'm the head of the Russo family, he said simply. I waited for more information, but he seemed to think that explained everything. Okay, I said, when the silence stretched too long. Is that supposed to mean something to me? Now he definitely looked amused. You really don't know. Know what? The Russo family controls most of the business interests in the eastern district of the city. Import, export, real estate, restaurants, construction. We have our fingers in many pies, as the saying goes. Understanding began to dawn slowly, like a nightmare coming into focus. You're in the mob. Mob is such a crude word, he said with a slight smile. I prefer to think of it as a family business, with deep traditional roots. I pressed myself against the car door, as far from him as I could get in the confined space. Oh my God. I sent a dirty text to a Mafia boss. This is how I die. This is actually how my life ends. Calm down, he said, his voice firm but not unkind. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. I certainly wouldn't waste good cannoli on you first. That's not reassuring. It should be. It means I believe you're telling the truth about the text being a mistake. But here's the problem. My world operates on perception and reputation. If word got out that some random woman has my emergency line and feels comfortable enough to send me explicit messages, people might think you're my mistress, or an informant, or any number of things that would make you a target. The weight of his words settled over me like a heavy blanket. A target for who? My enemies, my rivals, people who would love nothing more than to find a weakness they could exploit. He reached into his jacket. I flinched and pulled out a phone. I need to control this narrative before it controls us. What does that mean? He tapped something on his screen, then looked back at me. It means for the next few weeks, you're going to be seen with me in public. We're going to create the impression that yes, we're involved, but in a way that makes you unreachable and untouchable. The girlfriend of Dominic Russo is off limits to everyone. It's the safest category I can put you in. I laughed, a high-pitched, slightly hysterical sound. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? Are you insane? I want you to stay alive, he corrected. Look, I know this isn't what you signed up for when you witnessed that accident, but you've been pulled into my world now, however accidentally, and I take responsibility for the people who get caught in the crossfire. This is me protecting you. By forcing me to date you? By making sure no one else thinks they can touch you to get to me. There's a difference. The car slowed, and I realized we'd pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a building I recognized. Russo's, one of the most exclusive Italian restaurants in the city. I'd walked past it 100 times but never been inside. The waiting list was supposedly months long. I don't understand why you'd even care, I said quietly. You don't know me. I'm nobody. Something softened in his expression, just for a moment. You're somebody who had the courage to come downstairs when I told you to, even though you were terrified. You're somebody who made sure your friend could track you, who didn't just panic and make things worse. That tells me you're smart and brave, and those are qualities I respect. I don't leave smart, brave people to fend for themselves when I'm the reason they're in danger. The car stopped, and his door was opened by one of his men. Dominic stepped out, then turned and offered me his hand. Come on, let's get some food, and I'll explain exactly how this is going to work. I looked at his hand, strong and steady, completely at odds with the chaos he'd just described. Everything in me screamed to refuse, to demand he take me home, to run as far from this insanity as I could get. But he was right about one thing. I was already in this. The moment that text sent, my nice, normal, boring life had ended. And looking into those dark eyes, I saw something I hadn't expected. Not cruelty or menace, but a strange kind of honor. Whatever Dominic Russo was, whatever he'd done, he genuinely believed he was protecting me. I took his hand. The restaurant was closed to the public, but inside it was alive with quiet activity. Staff moved efficiently through the dining room, and the smell of garlic, tomatoes, and fresh bread made my stomach rumble despite my anxiety. Dominic led me to a private room in the back, a small space with exposed brick walls, soft lighting, and a single table set for two. "Sit," he said, pulling out a chair for me. "I'll have Antonio bring us something to eat." "I don't know if I can eat right now," I admitted. "My stomach is in knots." "Try anyway. We have a lot to discuss, and you'll think better on a full stomach." A man I assumed was Antonio appeared minutes later with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, followed by a parade of dishes: bruschetta glistening with olive oil, fresh mozzarella and tomatoes, pasta in a sauce that smelled divine, and delicate veal that practically melted on the plate. Dominic poured the wine and slid a glass toward me. "Drink. It'll help with the nerves." I took a sip, and despite everything, had to admit it was incredible. Smooth and rich, probably worth more than my monthly grocery budget. "So explain this plan to me," I said, setting down the glass. "What exactly would pretending to be your girlfriend entail?" He cut into his veal with precision. "A few public appearances, dinner at places where we'll be seen, maybe a charity gala next week that I have to attend, social media posts that suggest we're together. Nothing too demanding." "And how long would this go on?" "A month, maybe 2. Long enough to establish the relationship, then we'll stage a quiet, amicable breakup. You'll go back to your life, and my people will keep an eye on you to make sure there's no blowback." "Your people will keep an eye on me?" I repeated. "You mean surveillance?" "Protection," he corrected. "There's a difference. Look, Sarah." "May I call you Sarah?" I nodded, too overwhelmed to object. "Sarah, I know this sounds extreme. I know you're scared. But I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've seen what happens to people who get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time without protection. I won't let that happen to you because of a simple mistake." "Why?" I asked suddenly. "Why do you care? Most people in your position would probably just make me disappear, right? Eliminate the problem?" His jaw tightened, and for a moment I saw something dark flash across his face. My father would have done exactly that. He believed in eliminating all threats, no matter how small or innocent. I am not my father. There was a story there, I could tell. Pain and history and choices that had carved him into the man sitting across from me. "I got into this life because I was born into it," he continued. "I didn't choose my family or my legacy, but I did choose how I'd run things once I took over. I don't hurt civilians, I don't involve innocents, and I don't punish people for accidents that aren't their fault." I picked at the bruschetta, my mind racing. What if I say no? What if I refuse to go along with this? Then I'll still protect you, but it'll be harder. You'll need a security detail that follows you everywhere, which will disrupt your entire life. You'll have to move to a safe house temporarily. You'll be looking over your shoulder constantly. This way, my way. You get to keep living your life with minimal disruption, and everyone in my world understands that you're under my protection. "It's cleaner, cleaner," I repeated with a bitter laugh. "Nothing about this is clean." "No," he agreed, "but it's the best solution to a messy problem." I took another sip of wine, then a bite of the pasta. My God, it was amazing. Even in the middle of a crisis, I could appreciate good food. "If I agree to this," I said slowly, "what are the rules? What do I have to do?" He leaned back in his chair, seeming to relax slightly now that I was negotiating instead of panicking. "You show up when I need you to. You act affectionate, but not inappropriate in public. You don't talk to the press about me or our relationship. You don't dig into my business or ask questions about things that don't concern you. And most importantly, you don't tell anyone the truth about our arrangement. Not your best friend, not your family, no one." I have to lie to Jenna? That hurt more than I expected. Jenna and I had been friends since college. We told each other everything. "You have to protect her by not involving her," Dominic said firmly. "The more she knows, the more danger she's in. Tell her we met, we're dating, you're happy. Keep it simple and vague. That's all she needs to know." I thought about Jenna, about how she'd react to me suddenly dating a mysterious, wealthy older man. She'd be suspicious, but she'd also be thrilled that I was finally putting myself out there after my disaster of a last relationship. "What do I get out of this?" I asked. Besides not being murdered, I mean. He smiled, and it transformed his face. Suddenly he looked younger, less intimidating, almost handsome in a dangerous kind of way. Besides staying alive, I'll pay you for your time. Consider it compensation for the inconvenience. $50,000. I nearly choked on my wine. What? $50,000. Deposited in your account in installments over the next 2 months. Enough to make the disruption to your life worthwhile. That kind of money would change everything for me. I could pay off my student loans, build up my savings, maybe even quit my terrible job at the insurance company and look for something better. And after the 2 months, what happens then? We end it publicly but remain on good terms. If anyone ever asks, you tell them I was a gentleman. We wanted different things, and we're better as friends. Simple. Clean. You keep using that word, I muttered. Because despite what you might think, I prefer simple and clean. It's the rest of the world that insists on making things complicated. I looked at him across the table, this stranger who'd crashed into my life with his SUVs and his protection and his impossible offer. Everything about this was insane. I should run. I should refuse. I should call the police and let them handle whatever danger he thought I was in. But looking into those dark eyes, I saw something I recognized because I felt it too. Loneliness. Whatever Dominic Russo was, however many people surrounded him with their suits and their guns and their loyalty, he was alone in the ways that mattered. And maybe, just maybe, he really was trying to do the right thing in a world where right and wrong were painted in shades of gray. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll do it. But I have conditions. His eyebrow raised. You're negotiating with me? You said I was smart and brave. Smart people negotiate. Brave people don't just roll over and accept whatever they're offered. That smile again. The one that made him look almost human. Fair enough. What are your conditions? First, I need complete transparency about where we're going and what's expected of me at any public event. No surprises. Second, your security people can watch my building, but they don't follow me into my workplace or my private spaces unless there's an actual, verified threat. I need some semblance of privacy. Third, we establish boundaries now about physical contact. I'll hold your hand, do the couple things in public, but I need to know what you expect in terms of anything else. Anything else? He repeated, amusement dancing in his eyes. I felt my cheeks heat. You know what I mean. Kissing or more. A kiss or two might be necessary to sell the relationship, he said carefully. But I'm not going to force you into anything you're uncomfortable with. We can stage it. Make sure you see it coming. And as for more, I don't sleep with women who are doing me a favor. That would be crossing a line I don't cross. I nodded, relieved. Okay. And fourth, if at any point I feel like this is too much or I'm in real danger, I get to walk away and you still provide protection. I won't be trapped in this just because I agreed to it. He considered this for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. Agreed. But I need something from you too. What? If you see or hear anything in my world that scares you or seems wrong, you come to me first. You don't go to the police. You don't try to handle it yourself. You don't run. You come to me, and we deal with it together. Because the moment you bring outside authorities into this, everything becomes exponentially more dangerous for both of us. That was a big ask. It meant trusting him, really trusting him, with my safety and potentially my ethics. But I'd already crossed that line by getting in his car. Okay, I said. Deal. We shook hands across the table, and his grip was warm and firm. The moment our hands touched, I felt something spark between us, an electricity I immediately tried to ignore. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. So when does this start? I asked, pulling my hand back. Tomorrow night. There's a new gallery opening in Chelsea. Very exclusive, lots of press. Perfect place to debut our relationship. Wear something elegant. I'll pick you up at 7. Tomorrow? That's so soon. No point in delaying. The sooner we establish this, the safer you'll be. He pulled out his phone and typed something. I'm sending you the contact information for my assistant, Maria. She'll help you with anything you need. Dress shopping, hair, whatever. All expenses paid, of course. My phone buzzed with the incoming message. This was really happening. Less than 2 hours ago, I'd been walking home from work thinking about what to make for dinner, and now I was agreeing to fake date a Mafia boss. I should get home, I said, suddenly exhausted. Jenna's going to be freaking out. Of course. Dominic stood and offered his hand again. I'll take you back. The ride home was quieter than the ride to the restaurant. I spent most of it staring out the window, trying to process everything that had happened. Dominic spent it on his phone, typing messages and occasionally speaking in low tones to someone on the other end. When we pulled up in front of my building, he walked me to my door. It felt oddly chivalrous, this dangerous man making sure I got home safely. "Sarah," he said as I reached for the door handle. "Thank you. I know this isn't what you wanted, but I promise I'll make it as easy on you as I can." "Why do I get the feeling easy isn't really part of your world?" I asked. "Because you're perceptive." He handed me a card, different from the business one he'd given me months ago. This one just had a phone number. "This is my personal cell. You can call or text anytime, day or night, for any reason. If you're scared, if you need something, if you just want to know what you're walking into tomorrow." I meant what I said about transparency. I took the card, our fingers brushing again. That spark was still there, undeniable. "Good night, Dominic. Good night, Sarah. Sweet dreams." I laughed despite myself. Somehow I doubt that's possible after today. His smile was the last thing I saw before I closed the door behind me and climbed the stairs to my apartment. Inside, I collapsed onto my couch and immediately called Jenna. She answered on the first ring. "Oh my God, Sarah, I've been losing my mind. Are you okay? What happened? Who is that guy?" "I'm fine," I said, and surprisingly, I meant it. "And it's complicated. Can you come over? I need to tell you something and I need wine. Lots of wine." "I'm already on my way." I barely slept that night. After Jenna left, shocked, suspicious, but eventually convinced that I was safe and making my own choices, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every moment of the evening. The SUVs, the restaurant, the agreement, the way Dominic's hand had felt in mine. The card with his personal number sat on my nightstand, illuminated by the soft glow of my phone. Several times I reached for it, wanting to text him, to ask him a dozen questions that had occurred to me since he'd dropped me off. But each time I pulled my hand back. This was a business arrangement. Nothing more. By the time the sun rose, I'd convinced myself that maybe it wouldn't be so bad. 2 months of playing dress-up and attending fancy events with an admittedly attractive man, $50,000 in my bank account, and then back to normal life. I could do this. My phone rang at 8 a.m., an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Miss Mitchell? This is Maria Santos, Mr. Russo's assistant." The voice was warm and professional, with a hint of a Spanish accent. "Mr. Russo asked me to call about this evening's event." "Right," I said, sitting up and trying to sound more awake than I felt. "The gallery opening." "Exactly. I've taken the liberty of making an appointment for you at Bellissima, a boutique in Midtown. They're expecting you at 11. Mr. Russo has an account there, so everything will be taken care of. They'll help you select an appropriate dress and accessories." "That's really not necessary," I protested. "I have dresses." "With respect, Miss Mitchell, this is a very exclusive event. The press will be there, and your appearance with Mr. Russo will be photographed and analyzed. It's important that you look the part. Consider it part of your compensation." She had a point. My closet consisted mostly of work-appropriate blazers and casual weekend wear. Nothing that would pass muster at the kind of event she was describing. "Okay," I agreed. 11 at Bellissima. I'll be there." "Excellent. I'm also sending over some background information about tonight. The gallery, the artist, the other guests who will be attending. Mr. Russo thought you'd appreciate being prepared." "Thank you. That's actually very thoughtful." "Mr. Russo is always thoughtful about details, Miss Mitchell. It's one of the reasons he's so successful. I'll see you tonight." She hung up before I could ask what she meant by, "See you tonight," but the answer became clear when my email pinged moments later, with a message from Maria containing a detailed dossier about the evening's event. The gallery was showcasing a new artist, someone with Italian heritage who'd recently made waves in the European art scene. The guest list included several names I recognized: local politicians, business leaders, society figures, and accompanying each name were little notes in Maria's precise handwriting, allied with Russo interests, neutral party, potential rival, be cautious. I was being given a map to navigate Dominic's world. Despite myself, I was impressed. The boutique appointment went better than I'd expected. The staff at Bellissima treated me like royalty the moment I mentioned Dominic's name, and the personal shopper, a tiny woman named Gabriella with an impeccable eye, selected 3 dresses for me to try. "This one," she said, holding up a deep emerald green dress with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt. "It will make your eyes stunning, and the color is sophisticated but not too bold. Perfect for a first public appearance." When I tried it on, I had to admit she was right. The dress fit perfectly, hugging my curves in all the right places while still being elegant and appropriate. With the right heels and some simple jewelry, I'd look like I belonged at Dominic's side. "Mr. Russo has excellent taste," Gabriella said, as she arranged for the dress to be altered slightly and delivered to my apartment that afternoon. "He sent me a description of you that was remarkably accurate." "He did?" I asked, surprised. "He said you'd be beautiful but wouldn't believe it, and that I should help you see yourself the way he sees you." She smiled warmly. He was right about the beautiful part. I left the boutique feeling strange. This was supposed to be a simple business arrangement, a fake relationship for safety and convenience. But the care Dominic was putting into details, the way he'd described me to Gabriella, the personal phone number and the transparency, it all felt more personal than it should. Back home, I spent the afternoon researching Dominic Russo more thoroughly than I probably should have. The internet was full of information, most of it vague and speculative. He was 35, had taken over the family business from his father 10 years ago, and was known for being ruthless but fair. There were photos of him at various events, always impeccably dressed, often with beautiful women on his arm, though none seemed to last more than a few months. I found one interview with a local business magazine where he'd talked about modernizing traditional industries and the importance of loyalty. "My father believed in fear," he'd said. "I believe in respect. Fear makes people compliant. Respect makes them committed. There's a difference." The same distinction he'd made with me about surveillance and protection, about mob and family business. Dominic Russo seemed to spend a lot of time drawing lines, defining differences, creating nuance in a world that probably didn't appreciate it. At exactly 7 p.m., a knock sounded at my door. I gave myself one last look in the mirror. The dress was perfect. My hair was styled in soft waves, and I'd managed makeup that made me look polished without feeling like I was wearing a costume, and opened the door. Dominic stood there in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, and I actually felt my breath catch. He looked devastating, all sharp lines and controlled power, but there was something in his eyes when he saw me that made my stomach flip. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." He smiled and offered his arm. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." The gallery opening was everything Maria's notes had promised and more. The space was sleek and modern, filled with people who dripped wealth and influence. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, and the artwork on the walls was striking, bold, colorful pieces that seemed to pulse with energy. The moment we walked in, I felt eyes turned toward us. Conversations paused. People noticed. Dominic kept his hand on the small of my back, a possessive but gentle touch that grounded me as we moved through the room. He introduced me to person after person, and I tried to remember names and faces, to smile at the right moments, to laugh at appropriate jokes. And who is this lovely creature? A woman in her 50s, dripping in diamonds, looked me up and down with barely concealed curiosity. "Sarah Mitchell," Dominic said, before I could answer. "Sarah, this is Constance Bellamy. She's on the board of several charities I support." "Charmed," Constance said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "How did you two meet?" "Sarah helped me out of a difficult situation a few months ago," Dominic said smoothly. "I've been trying to properly thank her ever since. She's been remarkably resistant to my charms." The lie came so easily to him, peppered with just enough truth to be believable. The accident, the help I'd provided, it was all there, just reframed. "Well, you seem to have won her over eventually," Constance said with a knowing smile. "How lovely." As she drifted away, I whispered to Dominic, "You're good at this." "Years of practice," he murmured back. "You're doing well too. Just stay close to me, and I'll handle the difficult ones." We spent an hour circulating through the gallery. Dominic was attentive without being overbearing, always aware of where I was, always ready to guide me through conversations that started to feel uncomfortable. Several times I caught him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between amusement and appreciation, and something else I didn't want to name. "Let's look at the art," he suggested eventually, steering me away from a particularly aggressive businessman who'd been trying to engage Dominic and talk about investments. We stopped in front of a large painting, an abstract piece in reds and golds that seemed to shift depending on the angle. "Do you like art?" I asked. "I appreciate beauty," he said, but he was looking at me, not the painting. "Dominic," I said quietly, aware of the people around us. "What are you doing?" "Selling the relationship," he replied just as quietly. "People need to believe I'm captivated by you. I'm giving them what they expect to see." "Right. Of course. Business." Something flickered across his face. "Yes. Business." A photographer approached, asking permission to take our picture for the gallery's social media. Dominic pulled me closer, his arm around my waist, and I leaned into him, trying to look natural. The camera flashed several times. "Beautiful couple," the photographer said enthusiastically. "You two have great chemistry." "We certainly do," Dominic agreed, and I felt his hand tighten slightly on my waist. As the photographer moved away, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. A man had entered the gallery, flanked by his own security detail, and the energy in the room immediately shifted. People moved back, creating space, and I felt Dominic tense beside me. "Who is that?" I whispered. "Antonio Martinelli," Dominic said, his voice carefully neutral. "A rival family." Antonio Martinelli was older than Dominic, maybe mid-40s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of face that had probably been handsome once, but was now hardened by whatever life he'd lived. His eyes swept the room and landed on us, and his mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. He walked toward us with deliberate slowness, his security keeping a careful distance, and I felt Dominic's entire body shift into a different mode. He didn't look afraid, but he was alert in a way that made my heart rate spike. "Russo," Martinelli said when he reached us. "I didn't expect to see you here. I thought art wasn't really your thing." "I'm full of surprises, Antonio," Dominic replied evenly. "And I could say the same about you. Since when do you support emerging Italian artists?" "Since I heard you were the primary donor for this exhibition. I thought I'd come see what's caught your interest." His eyes slid to me. "Or perhaps I should say, who's caught your interest?" "Sarah Mitchell," I said, offering my hand before Dominic could intervene. "And you are?" "Antonio Martinelli," he said, taking my hand and pressing it to his lips in a gesture that felt more threatening than charming. "A business associate of Dominic's. Competitor would be more accurate," Dominic said with an edge to his voice. "Semantics." Martinelli released my hand but continued to study me. "You know, Russo, I have to admire your taste. She's lovely, much more genuine than the usual society girls you escort to these things." "Sarah is special," Dominic said, and there was a warning in his tone that even I could hear clearly. "I'm sure she is. Tell me, Miss Mitchell, what do you do? How did you find yourself in Dominic's orbit?" I felt like I was being tested, examined for weaknesses. "I work in insurance. Risk assessment, actually. And I met Dominic through perfectly ordinary circumstances." "Risk assessment," Martinelli repeated. "How appropriate. Are you assessing the risks of being with our Dominic here?" "Antonio," Dominic said, his voice dropping to a dangerous level. "You've said hello. Now move along." Of course. I wouldn't want to impose. But Martinelli didn't move. Instead, he leaned slightly closer, his voice dropping. "You should know, Miss Mitchell, that Dominic's world is more dangerous than it looks. Beautiful galleries and fine wine and elegant dresses. It's all window dressing. Make sure you know what you're really getting into." "I appreciate your concern," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. "But I'm perfectly capable of making my own choices." "Bold," Martinelli said, with what might have been genuine approval. "She's got spirit, Russo. Do try not to get her killed." He walked away, his security following, and the moment he was out of earshot, I felt Dominic's hand on my elbow, gentle but firm. "We're leaving," he said quietly. "But the event?" "Now, Sarah." There was no room for argument in his tone. We made quick goodbyes to the gallery owner and the artist, Dominic making apologies about an early morning meeting, and then we were outside, the cool October air hitting my face like a wake-up call. The SUVs were waiting, engines running. Dominic helped me into the car, and the moment the door closed behind us, the entire convoy pulled away from the curb with military precision. "I'm sorry," Dominic said immediately. I didn't think he'd show up there. He's usually more subtle in his provocations. "What did he mean about getting me killed?" I asked, my voice shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "He was trying to scare you, to drive a wedge between us." Dominic ran a hand through his hair, disturbing its perfect style. "Martinelli and I have been in a cold war for years. He controls the waterfront, I control the Eastern District. We've managed to avoid open conflict, but he's always looking for leverage. And I'm leverage now. You're under my protection, which means touching you would start a war neither of us can afford. But yes, he knows your existence makes me vulnerable in a way I haven't been before." He turned to look at me fully. "I'm going to increase your security. Starting tomorrow, you'll have a shadow detail. 2 of my people who'll keep their distance but be close enough to intervene if needed." "Dominic, I can't live like that." "You can and you will, at least until I'm certain Martinelli isn't going to try something stupid." His voice was firm, brooking no argument. "This is exactly why I wanted to establish you as my girlfriend publicly. It makes the cost of targeting you too high. But he's testing boundaries now, seeing what he can get away with." I closed my eyes, trying to process everything. This was supposed to be simple. A few events, some photos, and then back to normal. "I know." His voice softened. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. If you want out, if this is too much, tell me now, and I'll find another way to protect you." I thought about it. I could walk away, hide somewhere, let Dominic's people guard me from a distance. But something in me rebelled at the idea of running, of letting this Martinelli person scare me off. "No," I said finally. "I said I'd do this, and I will. But I need you to be honest with me about the risks. No more surprises." "Agreed." He looked relieved. "Thank you, Sarah. I know I keep saying this, but you're braver than you give yourself credit for. Or stupider. The jury's still out." He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face again. "Brave. Definitely brave." The next 2 weeks fell into a strange kind of rhythm. Dominic picked me up for dinner 3 times, each at a different high-end restaurant where we were inevitably photographed. We attended a charity auction together, where he bid an obscene amount of money on a weekend getaway package, and then announced he was donating it back to the charity to auction again. We went to the theater, to a museum opening, to a private concert at a venue I didn't even know existed. And through it all, I found myself noticing things about him I hadn't expected to notice. The way he listened when I talked, really listened. His attention never wavering even when important people tried to interrupt. The way he held doors and pulled out chairs with an old-fashioned courtesy that should have felt outdated but somehow didn't. The way he laughed at my jokes, even the bad ones, and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The way he touched me, always respectful, always appropriate for public, but lingering just a moment longer than strictly necessary. His hand on my back, his fingers brushing mine. The time he'd tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and let his hand rest against my cheek for just a heartbeat. It was becoming harder to remember this was fake. My shadow detail, 2 men named Marco and David, were remarkably unobtrusive. I barely noticed them most days, though I knew they were always there, watching, keeping me safe. It should have felt oppressive, but instead it felt oddly comforting. Jenna met Dominic at a dinner I'd arranged, and afterward she'd pulled me aside with wide eyes. "Sarah, that man is gone for you. Like completely smitten. The way he looks at you, I've never seen anything like it. It's just an act," I'd protested weakly. "If that's acting, someone needs to give him an Oscar. And honey, you're not doing much better at pretending this is casual. You light up when he walks into a room." I'd denied it, but her words stuck with me. Was I starting to develop actual feelings for Dominic? Was this Stockholm Syndrome or something equally irrational? Or was it possible that underneath the danger and the business arrangement and the complicated world he lived in, there was a real connection forming? The question became harder to ignore 3 weeks into our arrangement, when everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening, and Dominic had picked me up for dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant. Not one of his, but a family-owned place he said made the best lasagna in the city. We were sitting in a corner booth, talking about nothing in particular. My terrible boss at the insurance company, his frustrations with a construction project that was running over budget, when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. I need to take this. I'm sorry. He stepped away to the front of the restaurant, and I could see him through the window, his posture tense, his free hand gesturing sharply as he spoke. Something was wrong. When he came back to the table, his face was carefully blank. We need to go. Now. What's wrong? I'll explain in the car. Please, Sarah. The drive was tense and silent. Dominic made several calls, his voice clipped and controlled, issuing orders in Italian that I couldn't follow. We weren't going back to my apartment. Instead, we pulled up to a building I'd never seen before, a nondescript residential tower in a quiet neighborhood. Where are we? I asked as he helped me out of the car. Somewhere safe. Come on. The apartment we entered was on the top floor, spacious and modern, but clearly not lived in regularly. It had the feel of a place kept ready for emergencies. Dominic, you're scaring me. What's going on? He poured himself a drink from the bar, downed it in one swallow, then turned to face me. Martinelli made a move tonight. He hit one of my businesses, a warehouse in Red Hook. No one was hurt, but it's a message. He's escalating. Because of me? Because he thinks I'm distracted. Because he thinks you're a weak point he can exploit. Dominic set down the glass harder than necessary. He's wrong. What does this mean for us? For the arrangement? He crossed the room to stand in front of me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. It means I've been lying to myself. This was supposed to be simple protection, a business transaction, but somewhere along the way it stopped being fake for me. My heart stuttered. What? I care about you, Sarah. Really care about you, not because of some obligation or arrangement, but because you're smart and brave, and you make me laugh, and you look at me like I'm a person instead of a position. And that terrifies me because it makes Martinelli right. You are a weak point. You're the first real weakness I've had in 10 years. I stared at him, trying to process his words. Dominic, I'm not asking you to feel the same way, he continued quickly. I know this started as something you were forced into, but I need you to know that whatever happens next, whatever I have to do to end this thing with Martinelli, it's not about protecting an asset or maintaining appearances. It's about keeping safe someone He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Someone who's become important to me. You're really bad at this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. At what? At pretending you don't have feelings. I stepped closer to him, closing the distance between us. For the record, I stopped pretending about 2 weeks ago, maybe sooner. I've been terrified that I was alone in this, that I was being an idiot for catching feelings during a fake relationship. His hands came up to cup my face, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. You're not alone. You've never been alone in this. When he kissed me, it wasn't for show or for appearances, or because anyone was watching. It was real and raw and desperate, like he'd been holding himself back for weeks, and finally couldn't anymore. I kissed him back with equal fervor, my hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to end the threat from Martinelli, and then you're going to have a choice. What choice? Whether this becomes real, officially. Whether you want to actually try this with me, knowing what my life is, what I am. Or whether you walk away, and I let you go back to your normal life. The next 72 hours were a blur. Dominic kept me in the safe apartment, protected by a rotating crew of his most trusted people. He came and went, always looking more tired, more worn, but he never stopped checking on me, never stopped making sure I had everything I needed. Through his brief updates, I pieced together what was happening. He was meeting with neutral families, calling in favors, building a coalition to pressure Martinelli into backing down. It was delicate work, requiring finesse and leverage and the kind of political maneuvering I couldn't quite wrap my head around. On the 4th day, he came back to the apartment looking exhausted, but satisfied. It's done, he said, collapsing onto the couch beside me. Martinelli has agreed to a truce. He backs off, leaves you and my interests alone, and in exchange I don't move on his waterfront operations. Mutual non-aggression, enforced by the Council of Families. The Council of Families? The heads of the major organizations in the city. They serve as mediators when conflicts get out of hand. Martinelli didn't want this to escalate any more than I did. He was testing me, and I proved I was willing to burn it all down to protect what's mine. That was enough to make him back down. So it's really over? I asked, hardly daring to believe it. The immediate threat is over. There will always be tensions, always be competition. That's the nature of this world. But you're safe now. Officially, publicly, untouchably safe. He reached for my hand, threading his fingers through mine. Which means you have that choice I promised you. My heart hammered in my chest. The choice about whether this becomes real. Yes, I told you 2 months and we're almost there. The arrangement is fulfilled. You can walk away with your payment, your safety guaranteed, and go back to your life. I'll keep people watching over you from a distance, but you'll be free of me, of all of this. He paused, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. Or you can stay, really stay, not as an arrangement but as my actual girlfriend, with all the complications and dangers and strangeness that entails. You make it sound so appealing, I said with a shaky laugh. I'm trying to be honest. Being with me isn't easy. There will always be security concerns. There will always be parts of my business you can't know about. There will be people who judge you for being with someone like me. Your life will never be completely normal again. And what do I get in return for accepting all that? He looked at me with those dark eyes that had become so familiar, so dear to me over these past weeks. You get me, all of me, my loyalty, my protection, my time, my attention. You get someone who will move heaven and earth to keep you safe and happy. You get someone who sees you, really sees you, and thinks you're extraordinary. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You get someone who's falling in love with you, and is terrified he's going to mess it up. Tears pricked at my eyes. You're falling in love with me? Have been for weeks. I just didn't want to admit it because it felt like too much pressure, too much to put on you when you didn't ask for any of this. He brought my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles gently. But I'm done pretending, done lying to myself. I love you, Sarah Mitchell. And if you'll have me, if you'll take a chance on this impossible thing between us, I promise I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of that choice. I thought about my old life, the boring job and the predictable routine, and the safety of knowing exactly what each day would bring. I thought about what Jenna had said, about how I lit up around Dominic. I thought about the past month, the fear and the excitement, and the way my heart raced every time he walked into a room. I must be crazy, I said, wiping at my eyes. Absolutely insane. His face fell. You want to leave. No, you idiot. I'm crazy because I'm staying, because I love you too, and I have no idea how this is going to work, but I want to try. I cupped his face in my hands, making him look at me. I choose you, Dominic Russo. I choose this. All of it. The smile that broke across his face was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. He kissed me again, deeper this time, full of promise and relief and joy. When we finally broke apart, he pulled me against his chest, holding me like he'd never let go. You won't regret this, he murmured into my hair. I swear to you, Sarah, I'll make sure you never regret this. I know, I said. And surprisingly, I meant it. 6 months later, I stood in Dominic's restaurant, our restaurant now, as he insisted on calling it, surrounded by friends and family, celebrating my birthday. Jenna was there, still slightly intimidated by Dominic but warming up to him. My parents had flown in, surprisingly accepting of my relationship once they'd met Dominic and seen how he treated me. Even Maria had become a friend, helping me navigate the more complicated aspects of Dominic's world. Dominic himself was at my side, his arm around my waist, laughing at something my father had said. He'd kept every promise he'd made. The security was discreet, but present. The complications were real but manageable. And his love, his attention, his absolute devotion, that was as constant as breathing. I'd quit the insurance company and started working with some of Dominic's legitimate businesses, using my risk assessment skills to help streamline operations. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a life I'd chosen, and that made all the difference. Happy? Dominic asked, pulling me aside for a moment as the party continued around us. Incredibly, I said, and kissed him. Good, because I have one more present for you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. Dominic, it's not what you think. Not yet, anyway. He opened the box to reveal a key. It's to my place. I want you to move in with me. Officially. No more splitting time between apartments. No more pretending we need separate spaces. I want to wake up with you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I took the key, feeling the weight of it in my palm. Another choice. Another step deeper into this life we were building together. Yes, I said simply. Absolutely yes. He kissed me again, and somewhere in the background I heard Jenna Wolf whistle, and my mother make a happy sound. This strange, impossible, wonderful life. It was mine now. I'd claimed it, chosen it, fought for it, and it all started with one mortifying text to the wrong number. So there you have it, my completely insane, absolutely true story of how I accidentally texted a mafia boss and ended up finding love in the most unexpected place. If you enjoyed this wild ride, I'd be so grateful if you could give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me what you would have done if 5 black SUVs showed up at your house. Would you have gotten in the car, or would you have run? I'm genuinely curious. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.